Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, you already, right? You're the big FA, the financial advisor, and I definitely want to get into kind of how that came about because
Sure.
in society, I think, or at least our society, it's kind of taboo to talk about money oftentimes, especially with an older generation. I
Oh,
definitely
for
have
sure.
family, and they do well, and it's you kind of try to ask about it, like, hey, where did you guys go wrong? Where did you guys go right? It's none of your business. There's a lot of that. And
Hmm.
so for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to get into a business where all I do is talk about money and especially other people's money, and I'm going to help them. How exactly did that come about? And kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, where did
Yeah,
was there a day or when did you kind of figure out, like, what, I'm actually pretty good at this and I have an interest in this. And I think I'm going to make that my business. You know what I mean? Is other people's money.
sure. Um, well, first, you're not wrong in your assessment of kind of the generational differences in the way
Yeah.
that the level of transparency people have with that particular topic.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting to notice that my background kind of even informs that. So I grew up in a family, and this is such a big deal. I've realized more so the older I get, and the more clients we work with. But I grew up in a family that is traditionally very good with money, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're Midwest transplants. So I was born in Western Wisconsin, lived in Minneapolis, lived in Denver, and then eventually to Southern California as my dad kind of chased a sales management career across the country.
Sure.
And so we're third generation savers and investors, I would say, my brother and I, right? So starting, with my grandparents who were kind of World War II veterans and or generation and worked in kind of blue collar industries. And my parents were like the first college graduates from their families. My
Mm-hmm.
dad from a family of five, my mom just has one older brother. And so the result of what that led them to, which was kind of a more corporate style career as opposed to a skilled trade, which something about obviously,
Sure.
and or what my whole family background is, right, which was Wisconsin farm families and or people who worked for public utility companies, or my grandfather worked in Uniroyal tire factory for 30 years.
Wow.
My parents end up in these corporate jobs. My mom's working for a bank. My dad's working in sales, coming out of college. And what you find out really, really quickly when you go into that style of career is nobody's going to take care of you except yourself.
Yeah.
Even a long time ago, even if there was like a pension plan, which my dad's longtime employer, he worked for Lipton, who owns a bunch of grocery store brands. They had a pension plan, but that was bought out at like the midway point of his career because they realized it didn't financially make sense to have a pension plan anymore for corporate staff and the cost of maintaining it for a company. So the reason
Sure.
I say all that, which is way too much background information, is that my parents have been investing since they were in their 20s and they're almost 70 years old, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's part of our family lineage, whether I wanted it to be or not. And believe me, when I was a teenager, I hated it the way they lived,
Yeah.
right? We never went out to dinner, right?
Hmm.
I'd have an amazing baseball game, 3 RBIs, all this stuff, and everybody's going out for pizza afterwards, or McDonald's, or whatever thing you think is cool when you're 12 or 13, and we're going to
Sure.
go home and cook and have dinner at 9:25 at night, right after the game. And I used to think it was the stupidest thing ever
Mm-hmm.
until I got to college and my dad was semi-retired in his late 40s and coming down and having lunch with me on a Friday afternoon, and none of my friends had that experience. Right? We're going
Yeah.
to an expensive private liberal arts university. They're all up to their eyeballs in debt, or their parents are trying to get them through there, and they're probably
Sure.
all working until they're 70 years old as a result. And so I had this kind of flip-flop moment where I thought mom and dad were really cheap, to going, no, mom and dad are actually really smart.
Yeah.
And then I had a what's not a bad crash and burn moment in college where, this is so embarrassing to call it a crash and burn, but like basically I started using an online check register. It's kind of, I'll date myself a little here. Like before you could manage your bank account at a website, right? I found one that was like a open source software check registers because I didn't want to handwrite it in my checkbook. And
Sure.
I
Sure.
clicked one too many zeros in my account. managing it. So I thought I had more money than I did. And I basically bounced like 2 or 3 debit card transactions when I was a sophomore in college. And I remember this very kind of image of being in my dorm room, all of my friends going out on a Friday night, and I had negative $65 in my bank account from 3 overdraft fees. And I remember sitting there watching Channel 13 on a TV with like rabbit ears, you know, moving them around, trying to watch whatever Seinfeld reruns.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there going, I'm the smartest person I know, and I'm a freaking idiot. I can't manage my own money. What is wrong with you? And that was a like instantaneous change for me when I went from bad to good with money, as far as, you know, cash flow management and all of that stuff. And kind of it all again washed over me that all this stuff that I had been taught and learned for my whole life made a lot of sense and made your life a lot better if you just lived that way. And from that point moving forward, I became much, much more interested in personal finance. And anything that I get interested is either it's either 0% interest or all in. It's not much in between. It's kind of the way my personality works. And so it was a downhill slide into the career from there.
Interesting.
So that's kind of the background, and then more nuance on the, you know, how you choose to work in this field, which is super weird, of course, but that's kind of the long-term background.
Okay. So it sounds like sophomore year was kind of the big, you know, light bulb moment of like, all right, even for your own self, were you previously going to do kind of a different career choice before you started getting into financial? What were you planning on doing?
Well, my college education is in research marketing, effectively.
Okay.
So I've always been interested in how and why people make decisions. And I thought that would probably lead to, like, at best, my ideal career would have been doing like high-end corporate research, which sounds lame, except for it's kind of cool because you're helping shape the direction companies are going to take, right? Based on what consumer feedback is, which is nerdy, but interesting to me. And I always thought my fallback, or probably what I would end up in, would be doing business to business sales, you know, which is the career my dad had for most of his, like the first 2/3 of his career. But to be honest, if you've got the right personality traits and a good work ethic, you can make a career work in business to business sales. But you're also going to be grinding, like on airplanes on Sunday nights and missing time with your family and all the stuff they make young people do in sales. I was not super thrilled on, especially because I had been dating my high school sweetheart and we were going to get married after school. So I'm like, am I going to be starting a young family and be on the road 15 days out of the month? Like, that didn't seem super appealing, but I knew I could always go do that and make good money, probably. But it was going to be my like fallback.
So. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to check out the Standing Still podcast, both here on YouTube and wherever else you listen to podcasts.